everybody. Welcome to Reading Crossbow. My name is Lena, and this is my buddy Rob.
Hey.
All right, today we're talking about the already very much talked about Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. And if you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here and you saw Rob's halfway episode, wow, how are you doing? Rob, are you recovered from, what was that, a minute, 20 some odd seconds? I'm not sure how long that, moment was for you.
Well, I mean, it was No Nut November, so.
Oh. Okay, I've never prepared when you say stuff like that. I have no comeback, like nothing prepared. All right, this is how you guys know that we don't practice this ahead of time. Okay, I was very impressed by Rob's halfway, by the way. It means I have to up my game. It means I have to really bring it up to the next one I do, so I'm gonna work on that. But what did you think, Rob? What'd you think about the book after you kept going a bit? Was it where you thought it was gonna go?
No. It's the book started off very strong and then just disappointment at the end. Much like parents and their children.
Oh, okay. So I really liked this book. I mean, it had some parts of it that, of course, the YA category of doom, so to speak, where there's kind of this formula you expect to happen. So yes, all that happened, but I could just be a little bit more conditioned to it than you are. But I did really, really like this book, so much so that I have the second one here already.
I ordered the second one as well. After starting the book, I was full of hope and promise, and only to be crushed at the end.
Oh, man. Yeah, let's give a very fast overview for anyone who might be just joining. So, Fourth Wing, just super quick, military academy style book. There's dragons in this world. There's magic. A general's daughter is sent away. She's ordered away to go to this Dragon Rider Academy. And, much magic, much dragons, much fighting, much love happens in this book. That's the quick gist of it. I think I left nothing out, right? Nothing out.
Yeah, that's everything, apparently.
It's apparently all of it. So yeah, I'm gonna let you start off, and I have a quick question to kind of bump you into leading me along this journey that you went through with Rebecca Yarros. Who was your favorite character?
It was definitely Violet. I really liked that character. This character starts off with this, she has this condition where she has more brittle bones, weaker joints, kind of like, it made me think of Samuel L. Jackson's character in Unbreakable, Mr. Glass, I think. I've actually found out that this condition was actually based on a real world condition that people have. And I actually find that to be very fascinating. I get why they didn't name it, because it's named off of like real world, probably doctors, knowing that. But I actually found that whole concept to be very fascinating, and I found the character to be very interesting, especially right off the bat. She tells you, or it's very clear that she's being forced to join this academy, pretty much against her will. She would much rather be a scholar in the scribe quadrant. So I was a little nervous that she had this loss of agency, which is an unfortunate trope in some books. But given all the opportunities she has to try to escape that, and she's like, no, I really actually want to do this. That actually brought me along and made me really interested in that character specifically.
Yeah, we'll get to this a bit more in some of further along in the episode, especially when we get to our spoilers. But in the more glossy section of our episode, this book really talks about accessibility, like in general.
The one of the things we discussed in our last episode was the like trigger warnings and that kind of stuff. And this book actually has like a trigger warnings list in the beginning. And as I was reading it, I was actually like, hell yeah, this sounds awesome. I mean, it's like it reminded me of like the watching HBO as a kid. Like right when the movie first starts, it would be like intense violence, strong sexual situations. And you could tell pretty early on whether or not this was going to be a good show or a bad one. Like if it just said brief nudity, it's a dude's butt. That's all it's ever going to be. It's going to be a guy's butt. Whereas if it said, other ones like nudity or strong sexual situations, you knew it was going to be a little bit more
boobies. Sometimes. Well, and actually, I'd never seen that in a book before. So huge props to the author or the editor or the publishing company, whoever decided to put the trigger warning first. That's fantastic.
And I actually found the like a few of these were just, I was like, why is this a warning? Like hand-to-hand combat and poisoning. Those are very oddly specific trigger warnings.
Yeah, we don't grow poison gardens anymore. It's very 1600s. We digress. All right. This story starts off with something pretty cool, which really introduces a major female dynamic. So the books we've read so far have been female protagonists. But what's interesting about this one is it's a mother, daughter, sister situation for the most part. The father's passed on. That's not too much of a spoiler. We can say that. And so is the brother. So it's just these three girls. And these three girls are all badasses. It's not just the protagonist. So her mother's a general in the army, and her sister has proven herself to already be a dragon rider. And not just any dragon rider. She's like an amazing dragon rider with a really cool signet. We'll get into signets more. Signet's this ability that you have that you gain from having your dragon. Robert talked about that in the halfway episode. And then your signet is particular to you. And it's partly to do with you and partly to do with your dragon. And so the sister signet comes into play quite a bit in the book because they need to strengthen their shields around their city, and she can strengthen shields, expand shields, things like that. So she's a badass. The mom's a badass. Violet, we're not so sure. She's broken in the beginning. We want her to be a badass. And she does eventually be a badass after a couple falters. And poison.
Yes, and poison. That and that's actually one of the things like that why I really strongly came around to liking Violet as my favorite character, was the way she used her intelligence to work around her physical limitations and overcome people who are actually physically more stronger or faster than she was, but she was able to overcome that using her intelligence. And it's right at the beginning, poisoning is one way to do that, but it wasn't the only way. So she used the resources she had and was actually able to overcome a lot of these challenges.
So the book starts off with her getting sent away to this academy, Basgath College. I'm going to say that wrong. And it's the story of the first day, the journey to going to the war college, climbing up the big tower, getting to this moment where she has to cross this narrow bridge to get to the college. And I think what did you say in your halfway episode, like a third die or like 25% die or something. And where I was impressed with character development in this story was just some cool moments, like Mira, her sister, unpacks her bag and packs it again and says, "This isn't right. You're gonna fall. You're too little. You can't walk across this. Strong wind's gonna blow you away." Right? So she helps her there. A lot goes into getting her ready. She gets up there. I didn't hear you talk about this in the halfway episode, but she changes her boots with another girl. And so her sister had given her new boots because she said, "Yours are slick. They're never going to make it. You'll fall. Yours are worn." Gives her boots with treads on them. She gets in line, meets a friend, realizes that girl's probably going to die. She doesn't want her to die. She's not even friends with her yet, really, but she just cares about other people. So she gives her one of her boots that her sister had already given her. So there's this kind of continuing story, even just off boots. So for me, character development, and that's just one example, I thought she did a great job. I can picture all of these characters, which is something that we talked about with the Poppy Wars. I didn't love not being able to figure them out, who they are. In instances, we have people with pink hair, people with short hair, people who smell like mints and leather, as you said. All these great things, which for me, world building, picture building, seeing things in my mind when I'm reading was a huge win. I think the author did a great job there.
Yeah, no, and there was actually a few things that I really enjoyed about the book, like just the way some of the, I guess, the prose would be. Like, there's this one phrase where the character, because she has this condition where she gets hurt easily, she had injured her leg and she was trying to move, and the way it was worded was, "My ankle has its own heartbeat," and I know exactly what that feels or what that means. And that stood out to me. And I actually just really liked that phrasing. Now, the second time that phrasing came into the book was a little disappointing, because the first one was so I liked so much. But there's even a few other prose that I liked. The sentence is, "I take a step closer, but the distance between us only widens." And I don't know, I'm a sucker for that kind of writing.
Yeah, yeah, the author does a lot of that. So I was a big fan of that too. We're doing prose. Here's a big pro for me I wrote down. They're in their 20s. They're not teenagers. I'm so sick of reading about teenager love. Like, I'm over it. So the fact that Violet's like 20, and other characters in this story are at least 24, 20 to 24. I'm like, okay, this is more relatable. This is something I don't mind reading about. So that was a big pro.
Yeah. Well, and even from, I think, the very first chapter, when she was talking to her sister was advising her to have as much casual sex as she could, which I found,
oh yeah,
I found to be just hilarious. And and so the whole time I was just being like, well, what's the strategy on birth control here? Because not only was her sister encouraging her to do it, but all the other characters apparently are having a lot of casual sex. And it's not like Harry Potter and there's some fetus deletus. The magic here is pretty limited. So I didn't know how they were going to try to accomplish something like that. And you can't have these dragon riders who are in constant combat and peril of death be pregnant.
Right. Well, they did eventually talk about it.
Yes.
It's a tonic that you can take. That's very common, by the way, in my world of reading, Robert. When I heard you bring that up, they're like, how are they not going to get pregnant? I'm like, oh, it's a tonic. They all take tonics. Yeah. I have, I think, just a couple more pros. What's one for you?
At the end of the day, I really, the whole Dragon Riders thing was pretty cool. They do have issues where two mated dragons and it having a kind of bleed over effect to their riders. However, it's not like Dragon Riders of Pern, where the riders are forced to get it on, regardless of whether or not they even like each other, regardless of their orientation.
Okay, I've not read that book series, but now I want to.
Like that is a in the current. So I'm kind of glad it did not go that way, because that. So so even though there was some emotional bleed through from the dragons to the writers, it's not like they were forced to do anything they wouldn't want to do.
So, and then anybody new to any sort of dragon type of book, it's really common that dragons talk to their writers through, just like telepathically. So, and there is some bleed over a little bit to dragons' emotions that, happens later on in the book, but yes, not to the extent that you're saying. So the writers can communicate with their dragons, and then the dragons can communicate with each other, and then back to their individual writers. So sometimes that's how they share information. But yes, huge pro for dragons. I am a sucker for any book with dragons in it. I will just read it. But okay, one of my pros on our pro list here, I keep track of it on my phone. All right, another thing I liked. This author really takes the time to super explain all the rules, what's going on. And at the beginning of every single chapter, there's like a little excerpt, and it's taken either from a journal or like a war college book or something else, like an old script or scroll or something that they have from their history. So I really like that. The rules are very clearly lined out, and they have a codex, and they're often referencing this codex. So I'm never lost. And then there's times to break rules, times not to break rules, people who are really into the rules in these books. And so I just really liked knowing that, like, this is the way it is. The author thought about really all of that. And to me, that's fantastic. in these types of books.
I also like the little blurbs where it was like bringing in like in-world lore, you know, at the start of each chapter. I found that to be really interesting. The main character has a habit because of their scribe background where they do, whenever she's nervous or needs to distract her mind from maybe the perils of the moment, she actually does a bit of exposition, which I found good from a reader's, from understanding the setting point of view, but I don't know if those were not my favorite moments, you know, when the character was doing that exposition. Some of that I think might have been able to be handled just within the classroom scenes, rather than just these kind of blurting out of facts and that kind of stuff. But I think that's more of a preference.
Yeah, probably. I liked them. Taking her in these situations, one of them that I can think of without spoiling, she's in peril. She's trying to get through something. She could very likely die. So for her, it's that comfort zone. Where do I live? Where's my roots? What can get me out of this? It's like some people recite prayer. And so for her prayer, I guess religion almost, if you will, is her scribe's work. She loves, you know, a book her father left her. Like reading is her world and learning's her world. So I think that's why she went into like saying those lines. But it almost would have been better, I know what you're saying, if it, without getting too much into the cons, if it were like a line from like the Fable book that she loves, as opposed to like random history books.
And I think from a characterization, I liked that the character did that. That was an interesting personality trait. But maybe if, like I said, if it was different things, or, you know, sometimes it was just like this paragraph of exposition being chucked at you that I was not as much of a fan of. But honestly, it wasn't enough to spoil the enjoyment of the read of this book. So this is more of a nitpick than anything else from my point of view.
Great to know. And that's why I love that you're reading the books that I'm reading. I'm reading the ones that you're reading. Definitely opening up my world. I have one last like big pro that I put down. We talked about it just a touch earlier, but I'm going to go into it more now, which is accessibility. For me, that was a huge win for this book. Not just Violet, the main character, and her living with this disease or issue that she has. They don't really label it, as Rob said. It's defined more if you read about it online and talk about what the author based it on, but it's not defined in the book. But outside of that, there's also a deaf character in the book, and a lot of people sign. More people than I thought would sign, but that was interesting. They didn't really talk about like if they teach that in class, but more characters signed than I expected, and I thought that was way cool. And the way the author writes about signing made it clear that you're reading that they're signing, but yet it still felt like they were communicating normally as if they were speaking. I thought it was fantastic. I've never read an author writing about signing like that, so that was awesome.
And I didn't actually pick up on that being a potentially deaf character. I thought that was maybe just a trait of characters within the scribe quadrant. Like, this is a library, so everyone has to be quiet, and so they learned how to sign, do a sign language. So
okay, now I wonder. I
interpreted that very differently.
Wow. Okay, this will be great for people to get in comments and tell us how they interpreted it, because now I almost want to go back and read, because it never said she was deaf. Yeah. I think you're right. And I'm not saying you're right that everybody signs because they're scribes, just because like... But
that's the only character that you do see sign, that they sign with.
Yeah.
So...
There's other scribes and they don't say they're signing.
No.
Yeah.
So I don't...
Interesting.
I didn't see it the way you saw it either, so that's
cool. But another win for accessibility. And the author, knowing her background and reading a bit about her, I'm not surprised she brought more accessibility into the book. And then one more accessibility moment I won't go too much into, but when this is a moment of not overdoing accessibility for someone and not highlighting it in a way that makes them feel bad. Like, there's a moment where Violet really needs help and her dragon helps her, and we can talk about that more in the spoilers, but her dragon essentially makes it easier for her to ride him, and when she kind of scoffs at it, was like, no, I don't, this isn't, and then they're like, ugh, he shuts her down, like, no, we're doing this, it's not about, you being like, broken down. You can't do it. I'm doing this. Like the dragon just wants to help her, and he doesn't minimize her in any way, just supports her. And so I thought the way that her dragon constantly is supporting her and on her side in a way that's just so positive, just a fantastic way to highlight accessibility. But yeah, win.
Especially with the dragon, because the nature of the setting doesn't really have as much accessibility, but like especially her interactions with the dragon definitely highlights where some adjustments are being made, but due to her, like she's shorter than your average dragon rider, therefore it's harder for her to climb, that kind of stuff.
Oh, we didn't talk about magic too much.
Yeah.
Was that a pro for you or a con for you? I'm not sure if that's in your con section or not. It's my pro section.
We can talk about it. The magic system in this book only is accessible to dragon riders. So essentially the only people in this society that have magical powers are also the people with dragons, as their personal, Pokemon.
You did not say Pokemon. You can't say Pokemon for dragons. I draw the line somewhere. So that definitely, but for me, I found that to be interesting because as a power dynamic in this society, the only people who get magic are the people who are also in charge of this nation's most powerful weapon system. Because I mean, essentially, not only you have magic, but you also have an F-16 that only you can pilot. That's an incredibly interesting power dynamic. Yeah, okay, that's fair. I actually hadn't thought about that. Now that you say that, I'm getting a big con in my mind that the author didn't make things fair at all. They're just like, screw you, you little peons that we have to protect. Forget about you. Go be in infantry. Like, it's so rude. But I guess what I really enjoyed about the dragon magic, though, was I just thought it was cool. The dragons all have their own thing, by the way. There's different breeds of dragons, different types of dragons. Another example of the author doing a great job being very descriptive. I can tell you, what green dragons are like, what brown dragons are like, or the black ones, and another one. We'll talk about that one later. Another golden type of dragon, which is really cool. And so I can tell you all about these dragons because the author's done such a great job describing them. And then they have different temperaments, certain ways you should look at them or not look at them or approach them. They all have different types of tails. Some are aggressive, some aren't.
And I actually think the tails has more to do with their kind of subspecies or because that actually seemed to be very strong. Like, this is a dagger tail and this is a sword tail or a morning star tail. Like, it wasn't just the color, it was the combination of the tail and the color, and each one of them is a distinct breed of dragon,
which is awesome. I guess, well, again, just be raving on about how much I like dragon stories. I guess I could chill on that and go into more of the signet stuff, the magic, which is the dragon channels magic into their rider. So the rider actually has to use magic from the dragon. So if the rider uses too much magic from the dragon, it can stress out the dragon. Some dragons are stronger, have more magic to give, and so forth. And so there's rare types of signets or magic that certain types of riders can have. And then there's certain types of magic or signets that riders have that are even so rare or so critical or essential. I don't know what word I'm trying to look for here, but like they're important for the military that they're classified. And there's a few people in the book that have classified signets. I thought that was neat. And then there's some signets that are so rare that like they only get them every 100 years or so. We'll go into that one in the spoilers. And then when the person gets their signet, the rider, they get like a cool tattoo on them, which again, tattoos, just like, there's just neat stuff. So I loved that. And then once they get their signet, they have to train it. They have to hone it in. The author spends some time on that too, talking about, this was where it felt very Harry Potter like to me, because they had to go into the classes and hone their signet and work with the professor that's going to help bring it out of them and curate this. And that takes a lot of work. You can actually kill yourself. Some signets are so strong, if you don't get control of them, you burn out, you fry up, so to speak. And then also there's lesser magic too. We can't leave that out. So just having your dragon, just getting a dragon before you even get a signet, means you have some lesser magic. And you can do things like wards, move some small objects, right, with pens of all things, which is a weird thing that was in the book I didn't quite get, but lock doors, move stuff like that. So there's lesser magic in this too.
Yeah,
but, yeah.
And the lesser magic is pretty common. Almost everyone can do the same lesser magics. Like there's the magic pencil. There's because they still use quills and ink in the setting, but if you're bonded to a dragon, you can use these magical pencils. They have lamps, as you mentioned, door locks. So the lesser magics were interesting, and pretty much almost everyone could do all of them, at least as far as it was explained. But the signet power, what I actually, you said Harry Potter, I actually would go a different direction. It was far more like X-Men to me. These are radically uncontrolled powers. The characters start off with these abilities that they had no control over what power they got. And they pretty much only have the one. They might be able to use it creatively in different ways, but they really just have the one power, like, shadows or lightning or mind reading or, fire, So you might be able to use it in different ways, but kind of like in X-Men, that's where Professor X would take them into the danger room in the comics and teach them how to use their ability. And each person kind of has a special, unique ability. Some are maybe more common than others, but quite a few are almost unique. So I found that to be... So I took the signets less as a magic system and more as almost a superpower system. So I saw it very differently, and that's not diminishing on it. I think it was very interesting. And basically the power level of how strong your superpower was really was related to your dragon. But which superpower you got was somehow related to you personally. And they kind of make that clear in the book, that it has more to do with the dragon rider for which superpower they get, which signet power they get. Whereas but having a more powerful dragon gives you a more powerful ability. Like if you had a small dragon, and you had fire, you might be able to light a candle. But if you had a giant, awesome dragon, you can do fireballs.
So I love everything you just said. That just made my head go, they're superheroes, and you're so right, because I did not think of it that way, and that's exactly how it is. When I think of magic, I think it was just drawing on because I think of dragons as magical. So yes, the dragons are more magical, but their riders are more superheroes. That's true. Yeah, that's fantastic. I don't know why I didn't think about that.
And I do have some cons about that, but we can finish out the pros before we get to those.
I think that was it. I mean, I think that was most of them. Yeah, we got a good amount of them out there. There's lots of good stuff in the book, and we can get into stuff we didn't like. And should I let you go first?
Well, so I guess since we're here in the magic system, one of the things about the magic that I found, I guess to me, to be almost unrealistic was they actually pretty much point out that the magic powers you get, your signet ability, has a lot to do with you as a person, and what your viewpoints, like a character that's really curious and wants to know things might get a power, like reading minds or seeing very far away, where a character with secrets and things to hide gains powers over shadow. A character that wants to have more power in general gets like electricity or fire based abilities, or ice. Big flashy powers go to people that want more flash or power in their life. Whereas other characters who are a little more subtle, they get more subtle powers. And considering how the scribes work, I would think they would have like locked this down already and been like, okay, we're going to put you in classes so that you're going to pop out the most badass powers. Like we figured out that the people we're going to push you to have a mindset that will get you the military powers that we're looking for. Once again, I don't think this is necessarily a con. I just, I think in this setting, they actually would have weaponized this a whole lot, assembly lined these powers a whole lot more than they did. Especially when they, like, one of the powers is essentially what the healing power. It's the mending power. That you can use to you can repair things and also repair people. And it's like, that's a critical, really important one. I would have tried to figure out, how do we recipe this thing? And the way this society keeps records, I think they would have done it. They would have figured that out and been like, I know how to make a mender. And I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna have 3 every year.
That makes sense. Yeah, looking for the type of people. Well, but then the dragons would still have to want to bond with that person for it to happen. And the dragons are quite particular. Doesn't necessarily mean it can happen just by finding the right person that might have those characteristics that would generate that power.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. They say the dragons are very particular and only like certain things, and you must approach from the left, and that's where it's like, no, they would have definitely written this down and figured out the patterns of creating certain powers. Whereas
fair.
Because they know this one type of dragon, if it's a green with the dagger tail, you only approach from the left with your eyes down, and then you wait for them to approve you before you approach any closer. And they have all these different rules that they had figured out through observation.
I wonder though, now that you've said that, okay, so let's test your hypothesis. Not test. Let's talk about this a little bit. So let's say the humans did what you said, because you're right. They keep track of everything, right? They have the scribes, this huge library, like and they're merciless killers. We haven't gone into that much, but we will. So what if they figure it all out? But the dragons are so smart. So this is the Empyrean series. It's called that because that's what the Dragon Council is called, the Empyrean. And so I think the dragons are smarter. They would realize, oh, half these kids aren't even going to the Green Dragons. It's clear that there's a system here. We're just not going to bond with any of you. Like, screw you for a year. We're out. Like, I think the dragons would, like, mix that up. A con on the magic, like what you were saying, one thing that really stood out to me that was bothersome was there's one student, and this isn't pivotal to the book, so I don't mind kind of spoiling it here. One student gets punished to death. Like, not punished, they kill him because of a signet that the student gets. And it happens like in a courtyard in front of everybody. It's fast, it's quick, it's less than half a page in the book. So it's not a big moment to the actual book itself. But that particular power is not that different from 2 other powers that are also in the book. And so one thing that I thought was like kind of a plot hole for me was like, what the heck? Like, why they take this public moment to execute a child for having this? It was a mind reading ability, essentially. But other people have that same thing of power. So I didn't like that. I was like, what? How are you differentiating?
In the book they differentiate it because one was uncontrolled, whereas the other ones had limitations. So one of them was Professor X and can just read the minds of everyone they can see. The other ones had to like touch someone in order to have their powers, their mind affecting abilities to work. So that.
But he had just gotten it. Like, they didn't even take time with him. So maybe they have experience of other people, like they know they can't hone that in or can't control it. Maybe there's no professor headgear he can wear to block it out. I don't know. But like, that was weird to me.
But they had that specifically in their codex, their list of laws for the Dragon Riders, which was if you get what they called the intrinsic power, you will die. It's illegal to have that power. And it actually had less to do, I think, with the ability to control it, but the fact that you couldn't have secrets, that the nation state couldn't have state secrets. That's why they didn't like it. Whereas the other characters that still that had some limitation on their ability, then at least there's some control there that they can be like, okay, the upper military knows, don't let these people in the same room as people with secrets. But I actually do agree with you. That's a very soft or thin line as far as which power is acceptable and which one's not. And I didn't totally agree as well.
And then on that note too, I mean, we're not going to go this far because there's people who do like, they've had 6 months of like podcasts already and all they do is talk about Fourth Wing. I don't know how it's possible. The book's not that deep, y'all. But anyway, there's people who've written down every single moment in the book where someone's touched someone that had that power that they weren't allowed to tell people that they have that power. So people have made like long journals of notes of like, they touched on page this, and this, and go way into it. And it's like, that's crossing so many lines for that person too. Like, to first of all, they can't tell you what their power is, and then it's so easy to just touch people, especially in this book where people have to do hand-to-hand combat as part of their training every single day. So this person's literally touching everyone.
Yeah, no,
but they're not dead.
Yeah. It's a weird line they drew.
All right, fair. All right, so that was one of your cons. One of my cons, and this is totally opposite, so we can go in a different direction for a second. So you and I read a lot, and you notice some authors start to say things over and over and over. They use the same words. For me, okay, we're going to take this way down a rabbit hole. Not science fiction at all, but some of you might have read 50 Shades Grey. That author said the word mercurial a lot, and that stood out to me because no one says mercurial. If you're going to use a word like that, you can't use it like 37 times or whatever. Like, that's a word you use once. Anyway, so this author says ridiculously hot a lot. Like, there's a lot of ways to describe someone who's hot, and this author does. There's many ways she describes someone hot, but she says ridiculously hot a lot. I think one time she said it like twice, maybe 3 times in the same paragraph, and it's worded in a way that's so teenager. I think at one time it says like, oh, he's ridiculously hot, like ridiculously hot, and I'm like, you did not just write that down like twice in the same sentence. Yeah, and
I get that one to an extent, because that might be how someone is thinking. They're thinking in that kind of a manner, but no, and like I said, I mentioned the one phrase, the whole my ankle has its own heartbeat, and I liked that phrasing, but when it showed up again later on, I was like, well, that just made it a whole lot less special.
Yeah. So for a while there, for a second, I thought you were defending the ridiculously hot. I'm like, you are not defending that piece of trash. But then you redeemed yourself. So we're good. But yeah, there was lots of moments like that. Just repetitive words a bit too much. Well,
and the one that stood out the most to me was climb him like a tree. that phrase happened a lot.
Okay, we should probably get through these cons. All right, what's one from you?
Okay, so the con that I had with the violence is, and I've made it clear, I like grim dark stories. I actually was very excited by the violence in the trigger warnings, and the whole first half of the book is just lots of death, and I'm fine with all of that. Where I had the issue mostly was how wasteful it is. It doesn't actually make sense within the context of the book. They're in
no argument from me.
Within the context of this book, they're in a kind of warm, cold war with their enemies, the Griffin Riders, and there's constant flare-ups in combat, not an outright open warfare, but there's constant fighting on the borders. They need people. I mean, that's why they have conscription day, where they bring in all the a whole bunch of 20-year-olds and force them into the military, whether they want it or not. So it just seems so wasteful for them to have as many deaths as they do, and to openly encourage, even after someone gets bonded to a dragon, they're like, nope, still got to cut the weak links, you know. And I didn't get it. And the only thing I can think of, especially after the dragons they've already been selected with the dragon, they're still wanting to lose half of those people again. They want half those dragon riders to die before they graduate. And the only thing I can make sense of is they need the attrition so that they have more dragons for next year. That's the only thing that makes any sense to me.
And that's important to point out, because there's actually plenty of dragons. But the caveat here is that there's not enough dragons that are willing to work with the humans and let people ride them. There's each year after year, less and less dragons actually kind of sign up for this, if you will, to aid in the war efforts. But that was exactly my con too. So I agree. I wrote violence. Why? And I'm all about reading about the violence in this book as opposed to the Poppy War book, because this was not that descriptive. Like, you see, like, they slash a throat, they're done, but it doesn't talk about like obsessive, excessive bleeding out or things like that. They poison someone, they fall off the parapet, they're dead. They just kind of move on. She rolls past the violence very quickly. What surprised me in this book was how much violence, Rob. I almost feel bad for talking about the Poppy Wars with violence when more people died in Fourth Wing. Like, a lot more people die in terms of what the ones they talk about. Granted, more people died in Fourth Wing. I mean, the Poppy Wars with the whole everything devastation, but you read about the situations more in this one.
Well, and for Poppy Wars, you had a con, which was how unfair it was that you would have someone test into this military academy, and then after a year they're just sent home.
Yeah.
In this book, they're not sent home.
Just die.
You're going to be killed, and half the time it's by your classmates that are killing you.
Yeah. Okay. So in the parapet, the very beginning of this, like, someone's too slow on the parapet, so the person behind them just pushes them off, like, goodbye, weakling. And then they have these like weekly matchups, challenges, and they just fight to the death sometimes. Or I'm trying to think of other ones. They just kill each other. I just don't understand it. I agree. Like, I thought that they had this war to fight. I thought that they needed people on the lines. Like, sure, so someone's not super strong to take on whatever's out there that's so bad, but can't they just cut a few people down before the bad kills them? Isn't that worth something too? And I've read other books which had kind of murdery schools where the students are almost required to kill. And like one is called Red Rising, and in Red Rising, basically everyone is forced to kill. Why? But there's a purpose. It's not random. There's a very specific purpose, which is they want to make sure everyone in this position in society is capable of killing. So they want to make sure that everyone can do it. You all have the same like original sin. But after that, there's some deaths at the school, but for the most part, it's not, that's not really encouraged. Why? Because they need the soldiers, the officers. They need these to be the future leaders in the military. This one, where it's like, why would you be looking and encouraging the psychopaths to succeed in a military organization? It doesn't make any sense to me. I would actually understand if it was really cynical and they were like, oh, we're going to encourage the psychopaths to be very murdery, and then we're going to kill those ones. We need them to expose themselves so we can kill them. But I don't get that impression at all. They're definitely happy the more murdery you are. There is a group of people at the War College that you expect to die and are sort of like, they want those people to die. Like, it makes more sense that more of those would die because they have targets on their back. But even then, it wasn't even like, oh, more of them were in that group. No, it's just everyone. Like, they just all die. Yeah. So, any more cons from you?
I did have a problem with a trope that got overused to me, which is You can call it different things, call it the Worf effect, or red shirts, or the sacrificial lion. But basically, anytime any character got character development outside of the core, like 3 characters, they're gonna die. Like, that chapter. Like, and so,
I don't think I noticed
where
that.
I really found this to be a problem was there were certain characters I would have liked to learn more about, specifically the main character's friends and that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, I as I'm reading this book, I'm like, oh, I'm really thankful, you know, what Riddick didn't get a character moment, because I don't want him to die, because that's what's going to happen. Anyone who has any amount of character development where you're like, oh, I kind of like this, nope, they're dead.
Oh yeah, there's a certain scribe. I'm so nervous. Like, this is gonna be a 5-book series. I think they said. How in the heck is there gonna be enough people unless they start traveling? Like, there's just no way.
But essentially, by doing the sacrificial lion, where you build up a character, a side character specifically to make you like them, so that you can have the emotional investment of their death pages later. I found that to be a very frustrating overuse of that trope. Once in a while, tropes are, nothing's wrong with, I don't have a problem with tropes as a general rule. They're there because they work. It's just in this case, I was a little overused, and it was like, as soon as I saw a character start to get a little bit of interesting thing, like, you know, a character was like, oh, I'm really excited about this moment. Well, I'm sorry. It was nice to have met you, because you're not going to make it.
I think that my heart's not as, I didn't see that, but now I do, and now I'm mad because I know as I keep reading, I can't get attached to anyone, and maybe I just completely fell for it. We'll go into that, but there's a character that I actually shed a little tear for this pretend person in the book that dies, and I was just super sad about it, and I should have seen it coming. So, dang. Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, we have reached the spoiler section of our show. And, Liam. That's all I'm going to say. Liam, no. All right, we can get to him whenever you want to, Rob. But where should we pick up from here? I'll let you run us through this.
The books was written as this love triangle. It was set up as this love triangle between, you know, the childhood best friend and the bad boy new guy, and I none of that I found to be realistic at all. The childhood friend, let's call him Squad Leader Ducky, because he really comes off as a Hughes 80s movie male best friend. That,
you're gonna get his hate mail.
like I found him just be creepy from day one. Like, I never liked that character.
Oh, no, I thought he was cute and endearing, and I could picture him tucking his hair out of his eyes and just being... No, don't do that to him.
I really disliked that character. He's the kind of character that I immediately saw, and I was like, is this the one that's going to be the Predator? Because he has that feeling.
I didn't know. I got that. Another thing.
I got that from the very beginning of the book, that this was like I said, like an 80s male best friend. It's like, you hope it's just a guy with unrequited love for his female best friend, but might be a predator, and she's in danger from being around him. And I found that from day one. Like, I never believed that character. And then the opposing love interest, that's just pure... I didn't get the emotional attachment at all. I get, like, oh, they're fucking hot. You can't read pages and pages about abs and you know.
Oh, yes, you can.
How great their ass is.
Yes, you can.
You know, without it, like, like you get all that description. You're like, of course they want to have sex. That's a lust thing, and I get it, but the attraction, there really wasn't. I found that hard to believe. I found it.
Shame on you. How dare you say that? Nope, I'm gonna stand up for the characters here. Dane, there's no way you could have picked out he was gonna be the bad guy.
No, I took notes during the first half because I wanted to have something to talk about for my midway, and I wrote that I think during chapter 3 or 4 that I called him Ducky, and said I'm concerned about this character becoming a predator.
I think I just have rose-colored glasses, as my grandmother would say. I just read it for what it is. I don't think too much into it, and maybe that's how you're supposed to read these, Rob. You're supposed to not think too much into it and just be like, cute boy, oh, boy next door, and then, hot boy, ah. Oh, also, spoiler, in the first few pages, this is the boy that Mira, her sister, says stay away from him. Like, do not, at all costs, go near this boy. So I knew that boy, that is one that was very early on. So yes, I agree with you on that one. Was very clear. Bad guy, bad boy, she's going to be attracted to him. It's going to be this big lust thing.
Yeah, and I'm fine. I don't have a problem with that in the story. The reason why I said I have problems with that relationship, like I said, it's I understand the lust thing, but it's the why. Like, I struggled to understand the why. Like, why do they actually like each other?
The author gave you 8 reasons why. And the lines you talked about in your halfway episode. That is why, Roberts. Jeez.
But, no, I actually liked the Xaden character. I do. He actually was, from day one, actually trying to help her and actually make her succeed. Everyone assumed he was going to try to kill her. And everyone assumed that. His friends, her friends, everyone assumed that. Except for he never actually showed a hint of that. And they kind of say that there's a good reason for it. And it was from when they first met, right there on the parapet. And I found that I actually kind of thought that might be the case. Like, he saw the boots swap and was like, this is not a bad person.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that Xaden never came across. If the author tried to make him come across as bad, it was not successful.
Yeah, but there, I think it's like there's a enemies to lovers trope that and it. I mean, for him, he really never was the enemy. And that's pretty clear. Like, the book never actually makes him out to be bad in that way. She's the one who treats him like shit for no reason. But
yeah, well, she had not no reason, right? So we're in spoilers. We can say he killed her brother.
Well, his dad killed her brother.
Oh, his dad. Wait. Yes, you're right. His dad killed her brother. And then her mother is the reason why he has to go into the Writers' College, and all these war children, orphans now, because they killed all the parents that were the rebels in the Civil War. And then the children, in order to, live, basically, Xaden fought to have them, their lives spared. But in order for their lives to be spared, they would become writers and go to the war college. And so the mother, he has a lot of reason to hate the mother. Who did the mother kill the father? His father? Yes.
Yeah.
Opposite sides. So his father died through it all. Then her brother dies through it all. And then, it's this circle kind of death. So there's no reason to not hate him. It's just that he's really beautiful, so it's hard to hate him. And also is showing her some, peace and some grace along the way here and there, and sort of helping her. So she's very confused. But we find out later, you know, reasons why he might want to do.
I don't know. I found the relationship to just be challenging. I actually, in general, liked the way it was executed. I had a hard time suspending my disbelief on their connection, especially until really late in the book.
Yeah, really late in the book, agreed. I think that's where it becomes quite clear. And I'm not so sure because it says that they say that because they're two dragons, again, we're in spoilers, are mates. So his dragon is Gale, and her dragon is, why am I forgetting her dragon's name? Remind me.
Taryn, yes.
Silly me. Okay, they're mates. And so they say that, you know, that doesn't pass on through the dragon bond. However, I wonder if it actually isn't part of it, because when the dragons get lusty for each other, there's dragon sex in the book. Spoiler: dragon sex. It doesn't go into detail, but it does descriptively go into detail of the passion the dragons are feeling. So Violet at one point feels this. So at the same time, Xaden is feeling this. So he's good at blocking it out because he's built up these mental shields, you know, being he's a 4th year. So he has had all this time with his dragon to build up these shields and filter it out. But even then, he says, even after building up these shields, he still gets some of it. So the fact that their dragons are paired and they're in close proximity of each other, I don't believe that it doesn't have a small part to do with it. So that could be it.
He was very clearly giving her the hornies way before then.
That's true. But, like, don't you think that that's why it's so strong? Like, later? Like, this turns into, like, more than lust by the end of the book.
I think it gives them a certain amount of trust, especially once they start being able to get the head or telepathic communication. I actually found that to be super fun. That part of the book where they were talking to each other and like tormenting each other in public spaces by telepathically like talking to each other and saying things to. Like,
I love that.
That whole section I found to be extremely just fun. Like, and the dragons communicating through the head.
Dragons get in there. Okay,
like so Taryn is just hilarious. Like in his salty. You know, angry type of, but then he throws out.
Taryn is great.
Taryn is great.
Taryn is great.
Like when she's trying to learn her powers, and he says, "Should I get the wing leader?" That moment was just hilarious.
Okay, Taryn might be actually my favorite character.
Yeah, now that I think about it, he probably is.
Now that I think about it, I think it is. Yeah. So interesting part that you bring that up. So the author writes when they're telepathically communicating in italics. So it's fun because like you have like regular talking, so you have to like kind of parse this out, like how it's happening. You're like, okay, they're regularly talking now. Now this is in their head. And sometimes I have to read it back again and be like, did they say that one out loud or not out loud? And then, so writers cannot communicate telepathically between each other. That doesn't happen. And then also bonded dragons with writers is also somewhat rare. And they usually only let it happen if you're in the same year together because the dragons can't be apart for very long. It's like 7 days in general. So they like the graduates or the bonded pairs, the bonded writers to be in the same year so they can travel together because Xaden is a 4th year, Violet's a 1st year. That means he's going to graduate and have to go away, right? And that's going to cause issues for their bonded dragons. So what's funny, spoiler alert too, is that we'll talk about, good time to talk about this, but Violet bonds 2 dragons. And so in this mentally talking section, we have one of her dragons is basically a little teenager. We'll get to that more. And then one of her dragons is very old, pretty much ancient dragon, super, super old, been around, had tons of riders. There's a long rider history that they talk about in the book. And so like, as you're talking about getting the hornies and talking with like Xaden in his mind, they can communicate now because of their paired dragons bond that kind of goes over into them. And so you have the teenager in the background like, oh, they're so cute. And then you got Tane like, oh, dude, not again. Like, and then you've got like the 2 20-year-olds like having their little love chatty stuff, and then the hallway of people chatting. It's super, super fun.
That part of the book was very enjoyable. I did enjoy that whole part. Like when they were doing all the telepathic communication and the dragons, it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, should we talk about the double dragon? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's cool. I always imagine when, especially a single point of view novel, like that this was like someone in the future in this world is writing a biography about them. Um, they're special. That's why there's a book about them. That's kind of how you've previously said you picture them as movie characters. I kind of picture this as like someone's writing a novel or a, you know, a biography about them, and this is why they're special. So I'm good with her being special, and I have this special relationship with their dragons. I thought that was actually really cool. Where I thought that where I have a little bit of a problem was because of the sacrificial lion. I thought the entire point was so that one of them can die and she can survive.
This is something I've also thought about. Makes me very, very nervous. So when essentially this is how she gets her second dragon. So there's these feather tails. Feather tails are dragons that they write about in their books that they know nothing about. They almost seem mythical in a way. They're not mythical because they've seen them. They've had like encounters of people, you know, actually identified them. Her father was doing research on them, never got to complete it before he died. She's I forget the section of the trials that they're on when they have to go get their dragons. What that's called, but it's essentially this great big open field. They have to go out there, try to claim a dragon. As we talked about earlier, some of the dragons, you know, are mean, vicious, kind of spirited, like the red ones in particular. The green ones you can only approach a certain way. The black ones are hard to get anyway, super rare. And also when you go into that area of like the fighting grounds to get your dragon, claim your dragons, and see if a dragon wants to bond with you, people hunt each other down. So people try to kill each other even then too, so more violence. So she's getting chased down by these boys. There's one boy in particular, we won't go into him too much, we can call him like Neja from the Poppy Wars. It's like the same character in this book. They try to kill her. And then they see I said that wrong. They were chasing down this feather dragon that they thought was in there, and this golden little dragon. They want to kill it because it's like a mutant, like it looks wrong to them. It looks like a dragon, like it can't bear a rider.
They think it's like a runt, like you know.
Yeah.
They don't. Yeah, they think it's a runt, and they think they're doing a good by cutting away the weak link.
Yeah. And because it can't bear a rider, like why should it even exist? Like what a disgrace to its kind. So they go to chase down the dragon. She hears about it and she thinks like, oh, there's no way I'm gonna let that happen. And so she goes to try to save the dragon or keep them from killing it, but she gets between them and the dragon and all this stuff. And long story short, the dragon sees something in her, and is, you know, she saves the dragon anyway. Big black dragon comes, that's Taryn, and decides to bond with her. They both decide to bond with her basically because of her heroics. Essentially, Taryn bonds with her because she stuck up for Andarna, and Andarna essentially also bonds with her just because she's this, we find out, crazy little teenager who shouldn't be making up her mind and shouldn't be making these choices, but she does anyway. So that's kind of how she gets two, in a roundabout way.
And but in the books, basically, when a dragon, if a rider dies, the dragon most of the time will live on and will bond to someone else later on. Whereas if the dragon dies, the rider will die as well. And the reason why I think it's important that the main character has two dragons, which is a first, no one's ever bonded two at the same time, is because essentially it gives her a way of surviving her dragon dying, because she's still bonded to another one. And this is where that sacrificial lion, it just really kind of made me nervous the whole time. I was like, I'm just waiting for this, it's a heartbreak time bomb.
And I love Taryn, and I have a feeling it's Taryn. I think Taryn's gonna die. It kills me.
I think it has to be, but
it has to be, yeah. But we don't know. But I thought
it's
that
not. This is theory. It's not in the book.
Yeah, it's not in the book. It's a 5-part book series, in theory, right? She says that's how many she wants to do, or sees this going to be that. And the second one's out. So, yeah. And I left this part out, but Taryn didn't even show up for the choosing, right? Just the Feathertail and Darna? he shows up later to defend her. So that's right. She had shown up to like the choosing line earlier, and everybody was like, what is that? What the hell is that? So kind of also more fun storytelling. But also her tattoo is really cool because it's Tern, the big black dragon. He's the biggest, one of the biggest dragons. And the only bigger one is the war general, or
basically the highest general in the country.
Yeah, highest general. That he has the biggest dragon. So her dragon takes up her whole back, and it's all Tern, his wings spread out. But then in the center is little Andarna, all golden and beautiful. So that's fun. But yeah, so that is also something I had caught too, but hadn't thought of it in the sacrificial lion way. But yeah, so this book basically, you know, is just essentially a love story, forbidden love, because, you know, of the history between Xaden and her mother and his father and her brother. And then of course Mira not wanting her to have this relationship, and her getting through college, her using many means possible to get through this. We referenced poison earlier. She does that. She does all sorts of tactics. And then also the other part of the story is Xaden's kind of history and his past. It seems like there's kind of this conspiracy going on. Something's going on she doesn't really know about. Like he meets with his friends at night. They're all marked. We didn't talk about that much, but Rob did in his halfway. These children, these war orphans, all have like a kind of a shiny sort of glittery tattoo thing that goes, not glittery like Twilight. I said that so wrong. Y'all, it's not Twilight. But it is kind of like shimmery, I think they describe it. And that marks them. So there's these marked ones. And the marked ones have something going on. I don't know how much we want to talk about that, Rob. But and so that's kind of what's going on in the book. There's this other war brewing. There's attacks going on the outside of their city. So even though this civil war fizzled out 5-6 years before, it seems like something's going on again.
So I mentioned earlier that I started off this book, and even at my halfway I was very positive. I was actually kind of excited about this book series. I liked the brutality of it, but something happened in the second half that I found to be that kind of spoiled the book for me, unfortunately. And it mostly comes down to, you know, there was a civil war in the past where part of the country rose up in rebellion. And that's when like Xaden's father, or one of Xaden's father had been the leader of that rebellion, and Violet's brother had passed away, had been killed by Xaden's dad. So they had risen in rebellion, and they claimed that there was something fundamentally wrong about the society. And I'd kind of been predicting that as well, just from during my halfway. I kind of felt like there's something wrong in this society, and that they're going to have this moment where they were like, oh, are we the baddies? You know, we're the bad guys, and the Griffin Riders are the good guys. You know, we're on the wrong side of this war. We didn't even know it, because, you know, this is a bad totalitarian state, and it's controlling the way people think. And when you finally get the explanation, it comes out as their country is just not altruistic. That's it. The country doesn't want to expend its people and resources to defend their enemy from a third party. I found that to be just the biggest letdown, that this is all there is. The rebellion happened, and currently there's still some kind of future rebellion gonna happen, and it's all because their country doesn't want to help their enemy. That's stupid.
I think that's part of it, but yeah, you're right. I think, well, the big problem here is like that, and they talk about this is the wards are feeling. That's a big part, and that's the thing that we don't get an answer to in this book is, you know, why.
You do.
Oh.
You do. The marked ones are dismantling the ore that powers the wards and giving it to the Griffin Riders. They're the ones.
But that's not the
But so the rebels are actually actively endangering their own country by dismantling the wards and using the power source of the wards to help out the Griffin Riders against the third party, a different enemy. So they're trying to help that other enemy by exposing their own country to danger.
That's not all of it though. Like that's not.
So but the rebels they're like, we need to do the right thing, and our country's not doing the right thing, and their solution is to endanger their own country even more by dismantling their only protections against the third party.
I just think that's simplifying that too much. There's a lot of levels to that. There's like, oh, I try not to like overspoil. There's dragon magic helps power the wards. The dragons came into this like truce, if you will, like with the humans a long time ago. And that together and with their ward stone is powering this large ward, and it only goes so far. So what is it that people want to come in for? And yeah, they are smuggling weapons. What Robert's saying is true, but that's not just it though. It also has to do with the dragons. So there's like a whole lot of elements here.
The big thing is if the wards are up, no one else's magic except for dragon magic works inside the ward. So the Griffin Riders' magic and the third party's magic, none of that works inside the wards. That's what makes the dragon so powerful, or the dragon ward so good. And so, but what the rebels are doing is they're actually dismantling the wards to help the Griffin Riders against the third party. But essentially, they're just dismantling the wards so that now innocent people in their country are now being attacked by the third party. And being massacred, and these are just innocent, frontiersmen, and small settlements. So they're drawing a hard line, saying my country has to be more altruistic and help out, and their solution is to put civilians in danger.
Yeah, I mean, this. We're trying not to spoiler too much, but like essentially there's a big bad out there, okay? The big bad is bad enough that people want to get into this, like, think of it like a big shielded area, right? They're trying to come and get away from it, right? And exactly what Rob said, like, especially Violet's mother, like, is clearly hiding something, clearly doesn't want to help, and so she could be a big baddie, as you said, as you will. And so it's like, what is so bad? You have to think of like both sides, right? For our listeners, what is so bad that we have to keep them out? Like if we think about it from Violet's mother's side, like have to keep it out. And then, but also from the rebels side, or would-be rebels, what is so bad that we have to let them in? like it's an interesting mix. Is it that successful, as you're saying? I'm not so sure. And I greatly question, Violet's mother and a lot of that past history. We get kind of this like flimsy way her dad died, if you will. Like her brother died, so his heart goes out, and it's just like he was working on this mysterious research with the Feathertails. That history is not even written anymore. They're not letting people have access to it, so they're blocking a lot out. They're controlling the type of information their people get. They're controlling what type of information they get at the War College. So they're at the War College. They're there to learn war. They're there to learn about how to, handle these battles and these words dropping as they happen. But yet they're feeding incorrect information to them. And Violet finds this out, essentially, because of Dade.
Yeah. So the ultimately, I think that what I liked about all that mystery is I liked the mystery. I liked like what was the cause of the war, because they were being very shady about it. What's going on with the Griffin Riders, because they were being very shady about it. I liked Violet looks for a book in the library and they're like, oh, that book doesn't exist, when she clearly knows it exists and should be there. And so there's all this information control that's happening, so that it brings a lot of mystery. And like I said, where I kind of ran into an issue is like the answer to that mystery was a big meh. Like I just didn't care. Like that's where I had a bit of a struggle. But going forward, I think that can be resolved. I don't, kind of like in the Poppy War, none, essentially everything I said, all my criticisms before were mostly just like pet peeves or, small minor things. This one was a big big issue for me, but is completely resolvable in the future by having the character learn new information. I think that none of this is a permanent issue for the series as a whole. So
yeah, I agree. Would agree. I think this the letdown for me feels very similar to like in the Hunger Games, the last movies, where the leader of District 13, if you guys haven't seen that, it's been out long enough, you should. So leader of District 13 who's helping her is helping Katniss and ends up being bad. And to me that felt very flat for the movie series. Like one moment she's like helping them all, and then the next moment, Katniss has killed her. And it happens very fast. It all seems super flat. It wasn't well developed, and I'm hoping that this doesn't happen here, because I think there's plenty of story, there's plenty of good, there's plenty of ways, as you said, to strengthen this, let it keep going. But yeah, that is a fall flat moment. It hinges a lot on Violet's mother, and some choices that she's made since the rebellion. Yeah. Okay, though, so wrapping that all up, we've talked about the book enough. I hope we've given you enough reason to want to read it if you haven't, even with all the spoilers if you watch that section. I personally really like the book, but it's time to get into Show Me the Map. So Rob, I think so. We've gotten some comments in our Discord, so make sure to join the Discord if you haven't. And someone directly quoted Rob last time and was like, so you're getting some love in the Discord right now about your distinct hatred towards the last map, particularly the river. So take it away, Rob. What do you think about Fourth Wing's map?
Not only is there one map, there are two maps. Specifically, there's a world map, or at least the continent map, and there's also a map for Basgiath War College, which is the setting for almost the entire book. In both cases, I think they're great. They're decorated real well. I like there's a style to the mountain ranges on them that I think is cool. I liked the cliffs. I didn't like that it was a giant plateau, but that's for some reason like a vertical like puzzle piece just rose a couple thousand feet out of the ground. That's the way they describe that region, which it's like, fine. It's just gonna have to be hand waved as magic, I guess. But otherwise, I honestly really like the maps. They accomplish the task. They're of helping the reader understand the setting better by showing you exactly where events are happening and kind of giving you an idea of where the world looks. And they're both actually well made. I think they're very good looking maps. How about you?
I love the maps, and I think particularly they talk about like a dragon ride from two spots I won't go too much into, but Athbyne to Arisha, and about how that's kind of a trek for the dragons, even the strong dragons, because they just have to go up basically this giant cliff. It's like hard to get to Arisha, and Arisha's very hidden within this mountain range and then kind of this dipped valley, if you will. You can clearly see that like everything that they talk about is in the map. We've got it pulled up for you. They talk about certain provinces having weaker wards, some areas getting more attacks. I can easily find them. I think if I would change anything about the map, I actually would like to know where the range of the shields are more.
I think it's that dotted line that goes through the mountain range, because the ward is almost a perfect circle around Basgiath, or centered on Basgiath, and that's I think where the shield. They said the nation's borders end where the shield ends for the most part. And I think that's.
But the problem with that, if it were a circle, that would cover Arisha, and we know that in the book it doesn't hit Arisha.
Okay.
So it's like this, there's only one line in that mountain range. I see the larger dots you're talking about, but there's like tinier dots that show the provinces, and then there's those bigger dots, might be the shields. I don't know.
I think that's the national. I think that the bigger ones are the national border, but they said in general the wards follow the national border.
Okay.
or vice
I've
versa.
seen maybe even like a little shield kind of on here, or a faint glow and like a dome looking. I think would have helped the map, because that's one thing that I was like, I don't love that. But it is a beautiful map. In terms of like the compass is pretty. They put a beautiful border around it. It's clear, you know, the distinctions. At one point, Violet goes with one of her friends at the War College and sneaks away and goes to their home when they shouldn't do that. It's clearly not allowed. Big breaking of the rules. And I can easily find that here. One of the things we talked about with the Poppy War was we didn't even have a dot where that main character's hometown was, where Ren's home was.
Where the book starts.
Where it starts. Like, so yeah, very successful map. And I talked about this before. I just personally love when, we'll bring up this one too, when books have a map of like where they're living, and the quarters. On the Basgiath War College page, love this map. It does a great job like explaining this to me. You can even see where Violet's mother's office is. So at some point they sneak for a challenge into her mother's office. Clearly see all that. One thing I didn't like about this map was the parapet. To me, just looked like a suspension bridge, kind of.
But I like the map because the map is just showing you where all the things are. It shows you where the flight fields are, the gauntlet, the parapet, the scribes' quarters, that kind of thing. I kind of explains where everything is, and I like that. It conveys this the setting in a way that only helps and doesn't really hinder anything.
Great map. I don't think there's too much to talk about with it. Like I wish the parapet was drawn more like a stone. Like to me, I think of like Indiana Jones.
Okay.
With the what's the one?
Last Crusade.
The cup. Last Crusade. Yes. That to me seemed more parapet. Like it's a stone crossway. And I think they say it's stone in it. But it looks like it's drawn kind of like, you know, the little weaker bridge lower down that connects the college that everyone else can take. Yeah. So it's not drawn much different for me. That's my only thing is like, I thought the parapet was such a huge part of the book that they could have shown it more. But I wanted to add a section actually with the maps that I thought about between the last book and this book, which is I think a perfect 5 map for me. Because I was thinking about this map because it's going to be very highly rated for me. What constitutes a 5? And I think we need to add an extra little layer, which is some books, especially fantasy books, often will have like Aragon does this, like glossary of terms sort of and pronunciation guides.
Okay. And
I would love a pronunciation guide. I know that's not the same as a map, but it's like extras.
Yeah.
That go into it.
And what it's doing is it's just helping the reader understand the setting better. And really that's how I see a map and like a glossary. Yeah. Where I remember a glossary most standing out is things like Game of Thrones, because there's all these different families and people, and you know.
Yes.
And
great example.
Especially when you get into later books, it's like you might not remember this character from 2 books back.
So yeah, I think for me a 5 is going to be, it has all 3. It's got the map, it's got the glossary, and it's got like a zoomed in spot of like where a lot of the action's happening. If it's one of those books that has that, because some of them, you know, they travel too much to have it. But so I'm going to give this book a 4.5. Yeah. Just because I'm going to call a perfect 5 that. Like this is a great map for me. I love this map.
I think it's great. I have no problems with the map itself. Even my little nitpick about the map itself, which was the kind of puzzle piece section plateau that's raised out. That's in the book. That's actually critical to the book and the setting. So it's not the map. That's not a question of the map. The map is displaying the book correctly. So that's not an issue with the map. I think the map's great. I would give it I would give this one a 5.
Really? Wow.
I think it's
okay.
I think it actually nails all the things it should have.
All right. So I'm going to be stingy then. I'm going to require that glossary. Oh, okay. That's fantastic. Crossbows. I'm going to throw it to you.
So I know there's I remember a crossbow at the very beginning at the parapet when she was about to cross. One of the senior students actually just has one slung over their shoulder.
Yeah, she's one of the students signing them in. So after you cross the parapet, you get sorted into your different wings, or quadrants, first through fourth. That's why it's called the fourth wing, because Violet's in the fourth wing. We didn't really talk about that. So yeah, you have to they say go to the person with the crossbow, or she's the one with the crossbow. So yeah. And then there's another one on page 330 that I found. I don't know if there's more than that. That's all I found. I found the same ones you did. She gets to visit Mira at one point. And so won't talk too much about how you guys should have some things not spoiled. So, and it talks about a crossbow in that situation too.
The other thing I want to mention is they also mention a couple times in the book, though it's never actually in the book, it's just mentioned, something that they call the cross bolt, which is, by description, it's a dragon killing. It's a weapon that you can use against dragons, which to me sounds like a ballista, which is essentially a giant crossbow.
Which is very Lord of the Rings.
Like,
and I'm so excited.
Like during one part of the book, they actually consider trying to steal one, and they're like, "Do you realize how big this thing is?" They're like, "You could just steal the bolt, the actual arrow part, and it would still be too big." That's how. So that's why I'm thinking it's definitely like a ballista style massive crossbow, like a siege weapon sized crossbow. So
I really hope that we don't get into dragon killing like that, though. I would be so sad. But they talk about it, so
yeah, it's not in this book though. It's just mentioned, but it's cool.
Right. Yeah. And so Rob and I talked a little bit before recording tonight, and he had remembered that, and I hadn't. So I thought the crossbows were relatively weak in this book. I was going to give it a very low score, but now that you mentioned that, it's a bit foreshadowing, don't you think?
Oh yeah.
What does that up the crossbow score?
Yeah, they don't play really a major role in any, even the last one where it was actually central to the scene, where the character decides to not shoot the crossbow. That's not the case here. So there is crossbows, which means it's not a bottom rank, but it doesn't really play a role in the story so far. So
not yet.
So I would put this one at 2.
2. I was gonna. Okay, same. Okay, 2 for crossbows. Yeah. And keep in mind, we shouldn't get crossbows very often. Like, I don't think they're always gonna pop up. We've had 2 for 2.
Yeah.
Okay, we've done Show Me the Map. We've talked about the crossbows. Let's rate the book.
So
1 to 5. So
I guess the big question for me is always, would I be interested in reading the sequel books? Because if you're not interested in reading the sequel books, then essentially it's a bummer and just let it go. So for me, I liked this book enough that I am interested in reading the sequel. The issues I had with the book, either they're more nitpicks or they're things that can absolutely be recovered and repaired in future stories. So I would be happy to read some more of this book. So the series. So I'd rate this a 3 or 3.5. I mean, if I hadn't had this kind of bummer at the ending, I was easily going to rate this a 4.
Fair. Well, so I don't have the problem you do with or I guess it's not a problem for you, just dropping the books, as you said. So for me, I'm always going to read the series. So that's not as much of a factor for me. I guess it's whether or not I want to read the series. And then I think about the wide range of people I could recommend this book to. And I hadn't read it when I first recommended us reading this book. And I swore this would be a book you would hate. I just knew from the get-go. But then as I got into this, and there's like poisoning your enemies, there's violence, there's more people dying in this than I thought, there's better dragons than I thought. I thought the dragon part of the story was going to be weak. Turns out it's one of the best parts. And I love it. So I can recommend this book to a larger amount of people than I initially thought. So that ups the score for me. And then not just am I going to read on anyway, I can't wait to read on anyway. And I don't think it ended on as weak of a spot as you do. Like, that's when my emotions were soaring. I said Liam at the beginning of chatting about this, and that's because one of my favorite characters, as you said, meets his end, and I I was emotionally traveling with this story at that point. I was invested. So this book for me, because of that, because of the feelsies, so I have to give this for myself, I'm a 4. For, other people in the general public, I'm going to go like 3.8.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. We did it. Another book down. Our second book, Rob.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what you have up next.
Yeah, so our next episode is going to be which books we've chosen for you. So in general, there's going to be 4 episodes a month in our time period. It's a little bit longer than a month. So 4 episodes dedicated to the books we're actually reading, and then 1 episode dedicated to giving you enough time to order the books if you want to read along with us. So that's next week's episode. We hope you enjoyed this review of the Poppy Wars and choose to read it. We both rated it decent, high enough to read.
Yeah. I thought it was a very good book. I thought it was a fun read.
Fun read. That's good. It was a fun read. So thank you for joining us. Make sure to join us in our Discord. That's where we elaborate on these conversations more. Make fun of Rob, make fun of me. I get my healthy share of it too. So make sure to like and subscribe, because if you don't, I'm going to have Rob set his ringtone to, because it's the month of December, Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.